Welcome to the Strength Connection podcast, a show to share stories, insights, and experiences from some of the greatest coaches in the world. I'm Michael Kurkowski, so grateful for you joining me today. And if you like this episode, please like, share, and subscribe to support the show. All right, let's dive in. Here we go. All right, and we're live. Welcome, everybody. Shana, thank you so much for taking the time. Nice to have you.
Yeah, it's nice to be here. Thanks, Mike.
Yeah, I appreciate it. I love chatting with people in yoga for a couple reasons. One is I don't know. I'm not a huge practitioner of it. I've dealt with it in the before, but I know how much of a mastery there is to yoga and practice. It goes far beyond just the physical aspect of workout. There's really a connection piece of it on the mental side and the spiritual side, and seeing the work that you've done with YOGAthletica, not only with adults, but even working with children. I was really inspired by the work that you had. So I'm really excited to hear really about your journey, what yoga means to you, and how people can really incorporate it into their life. So I think this will be a fun chat.
Thank you. It's always fun for me to talk about yoga. The problem is stopping me.
Yeah. So to kick this off, I always like to hear the origin stories of how these things have gone on. You've been practicing for decades now with the work that you've done, but I know early on you were, a great athlete, worked in tennis for a while, and was really getting into a lot of like hard cardio based work and stuff, and then kind of transitioned to find yoga. So what was that? What was it that got you into the practice of yoga from what you were doing before? How did that whole story come about?
I mean, the backstory is actually pretty funny because I can be honest with you that if you had asked me the day before I discovered yoga that I would ever be a yoga instructor, much less for the last 22 plus years, I would have laughed in your face like the day before. But what happened the day before was I had broken my pinky toe, like my pinky toe. Who cares about a pinky toe, right? Mm-hmm. Walking around my apartment, I had just like run into a piece of furniture, broke my pinky toe, and I couldn't do the things I was used to, the running, the biking, the things that involve foot being in a shoe, right? Mm-hmm. And after a while, I'm like, okay, I'm well enough to at least do something. I can't barefoot. I could do something barefoot, right? And so I'm like, okay, there was somebody at the gym. I used to wake up at 4 a.m. I'd be at the gym 3 hours every day working out super hardcore with all the bodybuilders. And somebody had been telling me for years about this yoga class. And I'm like, yoga, like sitting on the floor and humming. I'm like, there's no way. But when you have a broken pinky toe, suddenly sitting on the floor and humming sounds like really appealing, right?
Right.
And so I went to my first yoga class with Brian Cast, who is the creator of Power Yoga. And it wasn't sitting on the floor humming at all. In fact, it was extraordinarily intense, and I was used to the most intensive workouts. I was a competitive tennis player. I was a competitive everything. And I'm like, holy cow. But what it offered that nothing else offered, like all hardcore workouts will have a mental element, mm-hmm. right? If you're not in the right mind frame, then you're not going to have real progress. Like at the gym, running in the streets, cycling, it doesn't matter what it is, tennis, baseball, basketball. However, it was that spiritual element, right? Like speaking to the deeper side of who you are as a human, that spoke to me so viscerally that my first class, I was like, it was like The Simpsons when the clouds open and it goes, right? And like, I'm just like, the heavens just opened up and started to speak to me. And I don't mean this in like some creepy woo-woo way. It's just suddenly like life was starting to make sense through the messages that I got through yoga. Now keep in mind, yoga has changed a lot in the last couple of decades. And the century, there was something still classical about it, meaning that the philosophy mattered. It wasn't just about getting a better body or sweating a lot, mm-hmm. or being where people, to see and be seen. Mm-hmm. Right. And so back then, the philosophical element was very, very prominent in the practice. It cracks me up when people tell me now, like, how spiritually connected they feel when they're going to like say core power and all they're doing is, sweating in
Right.
exercise, right? So it was a different type of maybe indoctrination isn't like I know that sounds a little propagandy, but it was a different kind of indoctrination into really the deep aspects of the practice. And
Mm.
so that's how I found yoga. It was purely on accident. I mean, literally, I ran
Right.
into something. It was
Yeah.
literally an accident.
What was it back like when you said it really was so far like out of your thought of like going into this practice? Was it more you didn't really know what yoga was, or was it more like you were looking for something that was more on like the intensive side for the physical and didn't see yoga as something that would fit that? Like what was that kind of thought process about at the beginning?
So, do you mean professionally or workout wise, like exercise wise?
Like workout wise, before you went into
Oh,
that first class and you said this was
okay.
not something you were interested at all, like was it more kind of just like ignorance to the practice of
A
it? Like you
hundred
didn't know what it
percent.
was about? Mhm.
Yeah. I mean, I 100% thought it meant sitting on the floor and humming. I have no other way to explain how I envisioned yoga, and I was, at the time doing very intense workouts, 3 hours every day. Like that just didn't appeal to me. The thought of it was just very far from what I thought would fill any of my personal needs.
Yeah. So that spiritual connection that you felt there, I think everybody can understand in some way what that means, but I think it's also a very personal revelation that you get to. Could you elaborate a little more on what that feeling was? Was it a different
Sure.
sense through your body? Was it more your mind went somewhere different than versus the other workouts and physical training that you were doing? How did that really kind of come to play?
It's funny. I would tell you that if I had to pick like the one like crystal clear element that was like, okay, boom, this is where everything changes for me. It was so I was 30. It was weeks before my 30th birthday when I found yoga. I was well into my career. I was not like a lost soul. I was on a path.
Mhm.
And at 30 years old, I had gone through 3 decades of uncompromised perfectionism, which means not only being detrimentally judgmental of myself, but when you're that judgmental of yourself, there it extends 100% to everybody else around you. And
Mm.
um, I was not living a good life. I wasn't living an enlightened life, to say the least. And I guess I was looking to reconnect. As a child, I went to like religious Jewish school and I was very connected to like Torah, for example, like
Mhm.
really, really connected. Even as a child, for some reason, it spoke to me like really, really deeply. And then I really disconnected for a long time, for a couple decades, right? And so yoga like reconnect me, but that crystal clear moment was that I had spent decades in this state of judgment, and yoga was the first time in my life, and I always feel like this is like an indictment of my parents, and it really isn't. It's just an indictment of the kind of person that I naturally am. um it was the first time in my life that anyone told me it was okay to fall in
Mm.
in my life.
Wow.
And like even to this day, I'm going to be 53 next month. It still like chokes me up to say that in a sentence
Yeah.
because I had one big failure in my life. I mean monumental. And it was I did not get into Stanford. Now, a lot of people don't get into Stanford, but I had spent 17 years of my life trying to get into Stanford. Like
Mhm.
that was like my
That
single-minded
was the
focus my
spot. Yeah, that was the
entire
next step.
childhood.
Mhm.
And I was such a golden child. I had never failed before at anything of any significance. I mean, I never got less than an A on a test. I never, I was the captain of everything. I was all-star everything. I was,
Mhm.
president of everything. Like, and then I didn't get to Stanford, and like my whole world just, I, I thought it was worth nothing. I mean, literally, I literally thought this is all worth nothing. And so that was another 13 years that I resided in that like complete state of you are not good enough, you are not worthy, you are, go down the list. And then I go to yoga and they're like, it's okay to fall as long as you get back up.
Mm,
And I'm like, what? What? Like, why didn't anyone tell me this when I was 3? Why am I hearing this when I'm 30?
yeah.
And that's where Mini Yogis was born, my kids program.
Yeah. It's such a, it's a powerful lesson that, we think that you should learn this at an early age, but that can stay with you for a long time until you realize that not only is it okay to fall, but it's so important to fall. It's so important to not be good at something because then you can actually work towards getting better at it and you can see the difference from when you started to when you did it. Life's pretty boring if you're just phenomenal at everything right off the bat, right? And
Right.
you can excel very easily at a lot of things early on in life.
That's
Then all of
right.
a sudden, if something kind of kicks you in the face on it and be like, hey, you're not the hot shit that you thought right off the bat, and realizing that's actually okay. That's actually, you're
Yeah.
going to learn more from that.
100%. Like it took me a lot of years. You hear it, but it took me a lot of years to really internalize that falling is not failing. It's not like
Yeah.
that second that I heard it, like I believed it, but I heard it. Do you know what I mean? I
Yeah.
listened to it. But I just, so like right now in the world, right? I'm known as a handstand expert. That's
Yep.
my thing, and I have a course that's handstand plus self-empowerment, right? But it's like everyone, like I get these calls all the time, like, well, what about headstand? I'm like, to me, I mean, I got my first headstand, like literally my first headstand, I hiked up and I don't know why, I just did.
Mhm.
So there's never been anything interesting about that to me. To your
Mhm.
point, it's just when things come easily to you, that's not where we get our power from.
Right.
We get our power from getting up again. We don't get, it's the people who get knocked down and get up again. Now there's like a song going through my head.
Right.
Do you want me to sing a few bars?
I think there's a few songs that are coming to my mind. One's an old school rap, and then there's another got a little nicer, I
I
think.
get knocked down, but I
But
get up
exactly,
again.
yeah.
They're never gonna hold me down. But really, but the power, like it's like every time you fall down, you gain more power each time you get up, right? Like who was it? Bruce Lee, fall 7 times, get up 8. He
Mhm.
didn't say fall down, get up.
Right.
He said fall down 7 times and get up 8, right? Which
Yeah.
means that you have to be willing to be persistent and repeat this process and not internalize falling as failure.
Hmm. Yeah. So when you started practicing yoga and it came right off the bat, like that indoctrination happened really early. As you say, you didn't buy it all hook, line, and sinker, but realized that something was different about
Yeah.
this of going in. Was it like was it more that this was something you weren't great at right off the bat, and this was something that you realize, oh, if I want to get really good at this, I'm going to need to put in a different like type of energy to it? What was kind of that kind of next flow afterwards that kept you going over and over again?
Sure. I mean, it was definitely humbling, right? Because
Mhm.
I'm like, here I am, world-class athlete in yoga,
Mhm.
right? And I'm like, wait, what? Why is everyone so much better than I am at this, right?
Mhm.
And I think everybody sort of has that same, especially I have a lot of like super athletic men who take
Mhm.
my practice and they're like, wait, why is that like 100-pound woman able to do these
Right.
strength maneuvers that I can't do? Like there's certainly something very humbling about it. And you have to release yourself from the end result and come into the process. I think that it was the concept of not the spirituality. I can't emphasize enough like how much that element was missing from my life at that moment. And by the way, when I discovered it, it was about 3 weeks before 9/11. And
Mhm.
I took to it very, very quick, like very quickly. And internalized it and really just obsessed over it because I'm just like, wow, these messages make so much sense. And I felt like my practice came at exactly the right time. You know, it's like new love. When it's new, it's exciting. You're obsessed
You
with
want to
it.
know everything about it. Yep.
And so I felt like it was really the gift that I was given to help me get through 9/11 because I'm somebody who is overly affected by externally emotionally devastating circumstances, to put it lightly. So it almost felt like it didn't almost, it felt like a gift from God. Like something's about to happen. I'm going to give you this tool and it's up to you to learn how to use it. And so, you know, that was a really timing is, you know, timing is everything, right?
Yeah, I fully agree. It's interesting. I had a similar experience when I found hardstyle kettlebell training, which is what I've done because it was something of always loved working out and was getting into all the different aspects of personal training, but there was something specific about this tool that when I saw it and I practiced it, I couldn't put my finger on it right off the bat, but you can't describe it, but it's like there's something different about this that like I need to dive deeper into what this is. Then I learned that there was a system that was created all around it, which was a system of specific practice that you can get better at it. It's not just a go in and just feel good from getting a good workout. You're actually going in to get better at a specific skill. So it just brings it a level deeper in there. And now
Yeah.
14 years later, I'm still practicing it and by no means a master at it, but it's, you see the little changes over and over again that you keep getting better at it.
Right.
It's a deeper connection to the physical side of strength, and you can't help but just get into the mental side and even the spiritual side, which is
Yeah.
it's such a word that's hard for a lot of people to describe. You can call it God, you can call it the divine or the spiritual sense, whatever it is, but we all know what it's there. And there's certain
Sure.
practices that just call to you. One might call to you more than the other one. For me, it was kettlebells. For you, it was yoga, but it's all really kind of singing out of the same hymn book.
Yeah. I'll tell you something funny actually about spirit and yoga, or not even
Mhm.
yoga. So, as you know, I'm sure, breath is very, very important in yoga, right? It's the foundation really of the whole physical practice. Now, another word for breath, right? The more like formal term is respiration.
Mhm.
Do you know what the root is? The Latin root of respiration?
No.
Well, what word do you see in there?
Respite would be one. Spite,
Spirit.
Sp- spirit. There, yeah, it's right in front of your face.
It's
Yeah,
right in there.
yeah.
They both come from spiritus, spirit and respiration. And so I think about like literally like breath is the elixir of life, right? No
Mhm.
breath, no life. It's
Yep.
a simple equation,
Mhm.
right? And so what is life though? Right? Because it can't be this body,
Mhm.
right? Because we all have a body. If it were about our body, we'd all think the same, we'd all have the same skills, we'd all have the same words, we'd be robots.
Mhm.
Right? Personality is not a body. You can't even point to a brain and say, "Oh, there's who I am."
Mhm.
Right? That's where I come from. Right? Nobody can figure this out. So think about it. Spirit in the ether, right? And then that we're bringing in really with every breath, like the universe.
Mhm.
Right? Like where does the breath that I'm breathing right now in Brentwood, in Los Angeles, stop from the breath that you're breathing right now in New York?
Mhm.
Like where? Where's the delineation? Where's the separation? There is none.
Mhm.
It's all God.
Yeah.
Or whatever you care to call God. It's all universe. It's all like one continuum. And so in a weird way, like especially in yoga, because the breath becomes so important, that I think that you can sort of imbibe spirit literally with respiration.
Mm.
This is my own theory, but
I love that. That's an interesting theory, and I understand it as well. There's study on breath, not from the physical side, but into the metaphysical side as well of
Right.
what it is. I mean,
Sure.
that's the one thing. We're all doing it right now. We're not even thinking about it. It's
That's
just going
right.
in, it's just going out from there. So
And
now
what a
what
miracle that that even happens. Could you imagine if you had to focus on breathing? We'd all be dead in our first 5 seconds.
well, I heard this before. It's like, you look at the priorities of things that we just take for granted in life. You can survive for many days, even months with no food. You can
Right.
survive maybe a week with no water. You can survive minutes without breath.
Right.
It's like at the most from there. So yeah, it's there's some deeper importance to it. And it's a great topic to go into. But so you now then went from practitioner of yoga to eventually going into and making it your life and making it your career from there,
Yeah.
which was, I believe, kind of an interesting transition for you. As you said, you already had a lot of things lined up of what life was supposed to be to
Yeah.
now transitioning over into, I'm going to start a yoga practice from here.
Right.
What was that process like for you, and when did that come about?
So one of the like sort of precepts of yoga, right, is being receptive, right? Receptive to the messages of the universe or whatever. And I think that like whatever, take it or leave it. I think my sixth chakra just went "Ooh," like I'm open. And so at the time that I discovered yoga, I was actually in the process of getting my MBA here at UCLA. And I also was well into my career. I was almost 30 years old, right? So I had started out in Hollywood and in the film industry doing script development. And then I worked for Microsoft for a while. And then, of course, like everybody at the turn of the century was in like the .com world.
Mhm.
To say that I was on a different path was, would be the understatement of the century. Um, and so I discovered yoga in August, right? And then very quickly, I was like, I think I didn't know I wanted to be a teacher, but I went up to my teacher one day. I said, I don't know what to do. I just want to do yoga all day, right? And he goes, well, why aren't you? And I would go down the list of excuses. Well, I'm getting my MBA. I have this great career. This is not where I'm headed in life. I have a good salary. And he's like, okay, well, I mean, those are the decisions that we make. And he took that ball and just hit it back to my
Mhm.
court. And I'm like, oh, I didn't see it as a decision. I saw it as a life path. And I saw it as, for my family or the people who I surround myself with, I was on like the correct life path.
Mhm.
And so all of a sudden I could not get this thought out of my head. It was like, you're making this decision. Nobody's making this decision for you. And so I had a bunch of messages. So this is sort of funny, actually. So I started thinking very, very quickly about this concept of yoga for children, of mini yogis. Now, yoga for kids it's ubiquitous now. I mean, literally, I don't know a teacher who doesn't work with kids, but believe me, at the turn of the century, there were basically two other people in the entire Western world besides me who were doing this on
Mhm.
any significant scale. I mean, it was a brand new and wildly different concept. So I was taking an entrepreneurship class at UCLA, and there were whatever, 30, 40, 50 people. Probably 30 people in the class. I don't know. And I was one of two people in the class. I started dabbling with mini yogis already at that point. I had started the program, I was, and out of nowhere, like literally apropos of nothing, the professor says to the class, I don't even know where this came from. He goes, Ms. Meyerson is not an entrepreneur. He goes, simply teaching yoga to children does not make you an entrepreneur. Right? Okay, I mean, literally, like the air was just sucked out of the room. It wasn't just me. Like I'm in a room full of very professional people,
Mhm.
but still, like they understood that that was like a really weird thing to say
Yeah.
and inappropriate.
Mhm.
So I stood up and I'm like, excuse me. I'm like, I went out, I created a product, I found a market, and I'm making a living at it. I'm like, what like, what is your definition of
Mhm.
an entrepreneur? And I walked out. And when I say I walked out, I mean, I never went back to UCLA.
Mm.
I literally, but it was a message, right? That like, why are you here? Like, why do you care if some professor who has his
Right.
own ideas of entrepreneurship doesn't believe in your vision? Now, I'll tell you something funny. 1 year later, when my class was on their final, like you do like a consulting field trip or whatever, they were in Australia. No, sorry, what am I talking about? They were in Germany. I was in Australia teaching teaching people how to teach yoga to kids at the same exact time. And I was on the cover of entrepreneurmagazine.com.
That's it's in the stars. That's beautiful. Did you sign a copy and send it over to that professor? Because that would have been
You
the best thing ever.
So
Yeah.
it's not my proudest moment, but yes. I I didn't sign it because Entrepreneur at that time had already gone digital.
Mhm.
First of all, second of all,
Beautiful.
that would have been a little too in your face, but I did email it to him. I said, by the way, Entrepreneur Magazine thinks that I'm hot shit. You know, here I am, like I'm like
Yeah.
the top banner article of the day or whatever of the week. And to his credit, he apologized. He invited me in to talk to his new class and talk about entrepreneurship. And he
Mhm.
took me to dinner and he was very, very, apologetic.
Mhm.
And then I felt really bad for doing that. Um,
No, I think that's beautiful. I think that's very poetic that it came full circle. And I mean, kind of kudos to him for, swallowing the ego at the side. And who knows, maybe he was just an asshole, maybe he was having a bad day or so. But I mean, it just
well,
the timing was right for, for you on that, as shitty as it is, right?
yeah, all it turned out really, because we had dinner, we talked,
Mhm.
whatever. He's just super old school.
Yeah.
Like he was an old, sorry, yeah, we're old. Like we just had this whole conversation about being
Mhm.
old. He was an older gentleman, probably
Mhm.
in his 80s. And like he was explaining to me, he's like, in my framework, like Ray Kroc is an entrepreneur.
Right.
Bill Gates is an entrepreneur,
Right.
like, so he was just coming from a much different framework than I was.
Yeah. So yeah, it is. It's interesting though. I mean, it's an example of, entrepreneurship and coaching is such a weird world because there are some rules and guidelines you need to follow, but they're very blurred lines of
Yes.
where like it's like, our goal as coaches and entrepreneurs is to play inside. Yeah, there's some boundary lines, but you got to play inside those and create as much as possible, get in
Sure.
there. And who is anybody to tell you what you can and can't do? Like that's, teaching yoga to kids right there. As you said, it seems so kind of mainstream now. Kids are getting like, we want to be more health conscious for kids and bring things in. But not that long ago, as you said, just a couple decades ago, this was not heard of in the Western
Right.
world. There was you and maybe another person or two.
Sure.
And there, all these things come from some light, giving it some fire and giving it some fuel. And you were that. What was the thought process behind wanting to work more with kids in this? Like you said, it was a very
Yeah.
so like there wasn't really a practice around here. Was it
Yeah.
just an idea that you had, or did it kind of fall into your lap? How did that kind of come about?
It was both. I mean, it wasn't an idea I have. It was a calling. I have
Mhm.
no other word for it. It came to me. I wasn't looking for it at all. I wasn't looking for a new career. I mean, I was getting my MBA because I wanted to run Fortune 500 companies, not because
Mhm.
I wanted to teach yoga to
Right.
3-year-old.
Mhm.
I was not looking for it at all. It came, I think, as a result of again, like that it took 30 years for someone to tell me that falling wasn't failing. And I really thought that I could change some lives and I have. I've changed thousands of lives at this
Mhm.
point. By imparting kids with that kind of information while they're still impressionable when they're not too old to learn
Mhm.
it. And the second thing is, I just love kids. I love kids more than probably anyone on earth loves kids. I mean, there might be some people who love kids as much as I do, but
Mhm.
but no one loves kids more than I do.
Yeah.
And so it was an opportunity to take something that I had always loved and mix it with something that was a new love and stir it together. dish it out.
That's so great. I've experienced working with kids in training before, and I think the difference that you feel is when they do something right or correct something, they are not afraid to celebrate that they're awesome in the moment. I think as adults, we're very kind of taught often to subdue like anything good have like, well, like don't shine out, don't let your light
Yeah.
shine on, that kind of like keep it internal, like we don't want to boast about things. Kids are like, did you see that? That's
Right?
awesome in there. Did you have a similar experience with that?
Yes, absolutely. It's funny that you choose the word awesome because that's always my motto is like own your awesome. That's what I tell everybody, own
Oh, I
your
love that.
awesome. And there's of course a fine line between like humility and pride. But I think that when we're taught in I know in my generation, humility was just nailed into us. I think that in this new me generation, perhaps that's taken a back seat, but there is a nice balance there where you can say, I'm awesome, but so are you. Like my being awesome does not detract from your awesomeness, but I'm willing to own that I have special gifts
Mm,
because we all do.
yeah. Do you approach yoga with kids in a different way than you do with adults? I'm sure maybe some of the movements might be different, but as
Yeah.
far as the philosophy behind it, is there a different
Yeah.
approach that you have?
It's so funny you would say that because like originally my vision of working with kids was that I was going to teach them what I was learning in an adult class, like just like that. And I was going to have all these like deeply meditative,
Yeah.
hardworking 4-year-olds. Believe me, like that vision dissipated like within seconds of
Yeah.
stepping into the first class.
Mhm.
Believe it or not, what you're saying is sort of the opposite, meaning that I'm teaching them the exact same movements as my adults, exactly the same. And even, yes, like my hardest stuff, my handstands, my arm balances, because I'm all into the empowerment. The messaging is stronger with my kids than it is with my adults as far because adults are much more entrenched, right, in their own beliefs and their own belief systems. With adults, I used to be very, very like philosophical preachy.
Mhm.
And after years and years of everyone telling me, Shauna, shut up and just teach, like the postures, unfortunately, I did. And now I save my philosophy for my like teacher training students, like the people who actually want to do like the yoga of the yoga.
Mhm.
But with kids, I'm very, very hardcore on the self-empowerment and the philosophies of yoga and without ever going into anything like religious or Hindu on any level. But with kids, it's very very much more upfront, the messaging and helping them to deal with the challenges that they're dealing with in their lives. Um, I don't call myself a therapist because I'm not,
Right.
but I am.
Oh, it's very therapeutic. Absolutely. I think anything with the physical on it. It's interesting you said that with kids because when I first started working with kids, I thought the same thing, like, oh, I'm going to have this class and it's going to be structured and organized. And 3 minutes in, I'm like, oh, we need to change everything
Right.
that I like. You completely threw out
Yep.
the entire playbook and it's like, all right, we need to simplify this down. We need to adjust this and work. But I think, working with kids, it's made me a better coach. I know because you have to be very deliberate with your
Yeah.
words. You
Yeah.
have to know when to shut up in many ways and just let them kind of play and kind of, work through it with it. It's interesting though with the adults that were so entrenched in that. I always wonder like when does that shift change over? Like with your kids, like what
Yeah.
ages are you working with? Is it like
I
very youth? Is it middle school, high school, or
I work from 2.5 up.
wow.
Yeah. And unfortunately, I've grown pretty pessimistic about where that line is between getting jaded and being, just really open and
Sure.
innocent. Unfortunately, I think it happens almost at age 3 right now,
Mm,
3.5. But just really quickly, because what you were saying about working with kids, it's like I call it herding kittens when it comes to preschoolers.
Yeah.
It's just like, yeah. Um, but I really, the kids who I work with from 2 or 3 on, because I'm a private instructor, those are the kids that have like the most empowered lives and really know how to use the tools. If I'm working with a kid, particularly who's, let's say, about 8 and older, as soon as I tell them falling is not failing, they'll argue. They'll argue with me about it.
Really?
Of course it is. Of course it's well, but think about it. As kids,
Logically, yeah.
well, yeah, people tell you A for effort. It's like, yeah, but here's my report card.
Right.
Right. So we say that it's a nice platitude. It's not reality vis-a-vis the external world, right?
Hmm.
I mean, it just isn't,
Right.
but it is for the internal world, right? If you miss a shot, you miss a shot. You can't undo that. You strike out with the bases loaded, you let down the team, end of story.
Hmm.
But it doesn't mean you can't hit a grand slam next time it happens.
Right. Yeah. It is. It's like that. It's the saying, we all know it. Like, it's not whether you win or lose, it's how you play the game. It's like as an adult, like, yeah, you understand the underlayers of what that message says, but
Right.
as a child, you're like, well, wait, aren't I supposed to win the game though? Like, isn't that the goal? And it's like, yes, it is, but well, it's not whether you win or lose, it's how you play the game. It's like it's almost like because I said so. But I get it. So like, yeah, the approach of it is much different. I can see as a child, like, coming out from jump and like you're trying to understand the logical side of exactly what you're saying, and then also get into the ethereal side as well.
Exactly. I think that we have to understand that so I'm sorry to get sort of woo-woo, but
I love
that
it. Keep
we're
going. Yeah.
that we're not humans having a spiritual experience. We're spirits having a human experience. And so what is the human experience? The human experience is defined by external circumstance, right? The human experience is defined by our senses, how we interact with the world around us. Right, which is why if you want to get enlightened, you meditate, you close your eyes, you cut yourself off from the senses as much as you can, right?
Mhm.
And so it's hard to explain to a child who only knows how to see the world in concrete terms that there are failures in life. There are failures. Again, like I just gave you a concrete example, or you could fail out of school, or you could let people down. You could there, but the thing is that in reality, first of all, there's only the moment, right? There's only the
Right.
moment. The past doesn't exist. It literally does not exist, nor does the future. It's never existed,
Right. Mhm.
right? And so, yes, there was that weird thing that happened in the past. It's not happening now. It's done. Now we can only move in this direction.
Mhm.
You can't move in that direction, so don't
Right.
worry about that. But it's hard for them to reconcile the theoretical of you can come out of this stronger. You just have to trust me, because who trusts adults
No, I get it. Yeah. Well,
versus the concrete, which is you actually failed. You let these people down. They're angry at you. They're sad. They're mad. And that's also reality.
yeah, it is. And objectively, absolutely. Yeah, it's interesting with the concept of time. What you said earlier about yoga being a way of like being receptive to everything. And I think that's such a powerful lesson to teach, specifically as young as possible, of understanding that. Because, I've always said I've had this debate with some people of what comes first, a strong body or a strong mind. And it's a
Yeah.
good debate, and you can argue both sides. But I said, when you get into a physical practice, it will naturally flow downstream into the mental. So one of the best ways to get into a meditative practice, it's not just about sitting cross-legged with your eyes closed in a 72 degree room. Go and move, like explore your body. You can do it through yoga or going for a walk or grabbing a kettlebell and doing it. And you allow those receptors to come in, and it's going to open up more things to you. And fortunately, I found this early in my early 20s and realized there was something different on it. But as you said, like with adults, I think we get so entrenched of, no, just teach me the poses. Like I just want to
Right.
know the physical practice of it. And
Agreed.
because I don't see it as a connector to other
Right.
areas of it. And some get through, those are the ones that,
Sure.
they keep practicing. But I think if more people recognize that, or were open to that, of like use your body and your physical practice to connect the other sides of it, more
Sure.
people are going to succeed long term in their health and fitness.
Well, I mean, tell me one athlete or one sport, one athletic endeavor that doesn't have a zone.
Yeah.
Everyone talks about the zone,
Mhm.
right? Doesn't matter. It doesn't matter if they're bowlers or marathoners.
Yeah.
Everybody has a zone. But that's the yoga. I think that the confusion is people think yoga is something that you do on a yoga mat that involves standing in weird poses. And that's not accurate at all. You can stand in weird poses on a yoga mat and not be practicing yoga because you don't have any mental or spiritual connection. You're just doing poses inspired by yoga. But you could also be cycling in the zone where all of a sudden there's nothing in the world but you and a bike,
Mhm.
and you are practicing yoga. Why? Because you're in complete alignment of mind, body, and spirit. There's no distraction, and there's no deviance.
Yes.
That's
Yeah.
actually the state of yoga. It has nothing to do with yoga poses as we think of them today.
Yeah. And I think, a synonym for that would be really a path to mastery, and it's
Sure.
like, yeah. So, and it's in, with the handstand work, I want to ask you about this, okay?
Yeah.
Because I know this is like your bread and butter and this is
Yeah.
something you practice. What is it about the handstand that you found so powerful, and, why it should be, into people's lives more?
Yeah. So my approach to handstand is much like Tony Robbins' approach to firewalking. So it's the gateway drug to personal empowerment.
Okay.
It's not just a handstand's just not a handstand. It's sort of the holy grail of yoga. Only an elite few have really mastered handstands. Most people are scared to even try. That's an egotistical thing too, because the flip side of ego is being afraid to fail. And so people don't understand that giving up is actually an egotistical maneuver, though they see it as the opposite. But what did handstands teach me? I mean, first of all, it took me years of daily practice to really nail the handstand because I didn't have a handstand coach. I had
Mhm.
to figure it out on my own.
Okay.
And I was just I had such conviction that I was going to do this. I saw myself as a handstander, that there was no question that it was going to happen for me. There was only a question of like how and when. So it taught me patience. It taught me perseverance. It taught me how to make order out of chaos, because handstanding, when you don't know how to handstand, is chaos,
Yeah.
right? And it gave me an extraordinary sense of self-empowerment. I mean, when you are the only person, whatever, in the yoga room who could do a handstand in the middle of the room, again, I'm not talking this from a lack of humility, but it's just like, okay, I earned this. I worked so hard for this, and here it is. Um, for some people, honestly, it is just a party trick. And that's fine too, because the byproducts are the byproducts no matter what. But there's very few people who I've taught thousands of people at this point, because I teach all over the world. And I mean, I've never seen anybody get it on their first try, ever.
Right. Yeah.
And most people who come to my handstand workshops have been working on it for years, right? And so, but why are they still there, right? The only people who are going to make it are the people who are still there after years of trying, right?
Mhm.
So there's something to be said for trusting the process and letting go of the result. And so those posters, I don't know, they were very popular a long time, like a while ago. They were really long, and it's like everything I needed to know I learned from whatever, my
Mhm.
dog, from
Right.
kindergarten, from, a microphone. And
Yep.
it had all these funny little things. Like, I truly believe everything you need to fully succeed in life, you'll learn from the process of handstanding. Now, my handstand breakthrough course is actually not just handstands, though. It is handstands in direct combination with self-empowerment and mindset. Like it's a very like fluid process from one to the other.
Mhm.
But it's life-changing stuff. And the people who master handstands master their lives. They just do. You're not going to see a lot of schlubs in this world who are handstanders.
Yeah, it is. It's interesting. It's I think it's one of those things that you could be a incredibly physically fit person or have all these things, but if you've never practiced a specific thing, the chances that you're gonna hit it right off the bat and really master it is, zero is slim to none right
That's
there.
right.
So I think it's that the pursuit of something that is a
Mhm.
challenge, you can do it with grace. And in Strong First, we have a body weight course where they practice handstand. It's all about really connecting and using your body. And
Yeah.
a movement like a handstand, I think, because it's your own body weight, there's no external load that is makes you have to constrict your body and really work with it. It's only your body. You have to get your mind really connected with
Right.
creating tension in your body to move and flow through it. That only comes from practice on a regular and daily basis to do. And it could be, so I understand where you're coming from, Sean, on that of it's not just about the physical aspect of the handstand, it's the
Yeah.
pursuit of doing something consistently over and over again. And
Yeah.
that's only going to blend into other areas of your life, I'm sure.
Sure. And like when I ask people like why can't you balance your handstand now? If you had to put your finger on the button that's holding you back, what would it be? And the answer is not usually like I'm not strong enough. The answer 9 times out of 10 is I'm scared.
Mhm. Yeah, it's
So
vulnerable. You're in a vulnerable position.
right. So, because I'm talking about not handstanding at the wall, I'm talking about balancing in the middle of the room, nowhere near a wall.
Yeah.
And so people are literally afraid they're going to die. Like, they're like, I'm going to fall over and die. And I'm like, okay, I'm going to take that fear away from you. You just got to trust me.
Mhm.
Um, but again, like, the t-shirt, feel the fear and do it anyway. And that's nice for a handstand. But again, like how do we bring this into our lives? Because when you're petrified to handstand in the middle of the room, and then, 8 weeks later or 10 weeks later, or however long it takes you, you're actually handstanding in the middle of the room. That's proof positive that whatever you fear is irrational,
Mhm.
right? Fear is faith in the negative.
Mm.
Okay. It's a belief that the worst is going to happen. Doesn't even have to be the worst. Something bad is going to
Yeah,
happen.
some catastrophic. Yeah.
So when you could switch the faith in the negative to faith in the positive, we just call it faith. And when you can own that, then, faith is indivisible. You can't have a little bit of faith. Either you have full faith or you have no faith, because
Mm.
that's the nature of faith. So when you build that muscle on the mat, you can carry it off the mat. Like I'm Jewish, but my favorite biblical passage is actually Christian, and it's about having the faith the size of a mustard seed, right? If you have faith the size of a mustard seed, you can move mountains. Nothing will be impossible for you. Well, I mean, that sounds like, well, okay, great. Of course I could get the faith of a mustard seed, but wait, faith is indivisible. All the faith in the world is contained in a mustard seed or a grain of sand.
Mhm.
Complete faith, it's indivisible.
Yeah, that's it. That's interesting. That's an interesting thought, right? Because we put a degree on it in our own perception. It's like bravery. It's like whether you're a little brave or you're a lot brave, if you do the thing, it's bravery. Like you can't fake it from there. So, um,
Yeah.
well, Shauna, I really appreciate you coming on today. I love the philosophy that you have around it, like not just from the practice, the physical practice, but how you indoctrinate this into your life through really mastery. Introducing this to the youth and to kids, I think is absolutely beautiful. So I really appreciate you sharing your insights and your story today.
Thank you so much. And I appreciate you having me on. It's been such a pleasure to connect.
Yeah,
And if anyone wants to reach out to me, all of my links, including to mini yogis, are on my YOGAthletica website.
perfect.
And if I could just spell that out, it's YOGAthletica.com. I know I spelled that fast, but yeah, anybody who wants help and empowering themselves and owning their awesome. That's what I do. It's what I love.
I love it. Yep. And we'll get your link right in the show notes. So listeners, go
Thank you.
check that out. Shana, thank you so much. Listeners, thank you for following, and I'll catch you on the next one. All right, peace.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much for joining me today. I hope you found some great value here. And if you like this episode, please drop a comment and leave us a 5-star rating and review. It does more to build the show than you can imagine. And do not forget to check out and join the Strength Connection Facebook group. In this group, I share the biggest takeaways and lessons from these amazing conversations, as well as training and strength tips for pursuing mastery and fulfillment in life. This group is filled with individuals looking to take full control over their strength, and it's the perfect space to explore new ideas and to share your journey. You'll also get exclusive access to the Strength Connection Mastery Seminars. It's a deep dive into the physical, mental, and spiritual training that you can begin using immediately. So do not wait. Go now. Seriously, go. All right, much love to you. Thank you so much, and I'll catch you on the next one.